Right, let me take you that story now. The Mineral Council of South Africa says the Mineral Resources Development Bill fails to foster an environment conducive to investment and job creation. The bill aims to transform South Africa's mining industry by strengthening regulation, promoting inclusive growth, and enhancing the legal governance of the mineral exploitation. Macua Executive Director Christopher Rutledge joins me now for their reflection on this. Christopher, good to have you, and thank you very much for coming on this afternoon. The bill aims to enhance, we are told, according to National Assembly, confidence by removing red tape and providing regulatory certainty to attract and retain investment. What are you finding is a challenge with this draft at the moment?
I think there is a myriad of problems, and I think that we are certainly seem to be at very different ends of the equation. You know, the Minerals Council, for number one, seems to be a actor that is set on greed. You know, because if one looks at what this bill is done. This bill has met almost all of the demands of the Minerals Council while excluding all of the requests and the inputs from communities and civil society. Right. And yet here's the Minerals Council still saying that they want even more. So what this bill does, it gives them a free rein. They are not held accountable for transformation. They are not held accountable for community reparations or development. They are not held accountable for anything. And yet, you know, the Minerals Council is still saying that they want more. Now that's greedy. We've also shown that their profits have increased something like 4,900% over the last 30 years. And yet they still want more. I mean, that's not a recipe for moving this country forward, especially at a time now when the state is talking about a social dialogue. Yeah. If there is a need for a social dialogue, it's in the mining sector, because we are very far apart. Mining wants to take as much profit as possible and leave the country in deeper inequality, because we've seen over the last 30 years that mining has done nothing to uplift the communities around them. In fact, they've made communities poorer. So, you know, we have a big gap between where the Minerals Council is and what the government is doing for them, you know, as if they were the servants of the Minerals Council, because they do everything the Minerals Council wants.
Yeah. So you are saying, for example, a statement from Cabinet that says, I think in May, they were saying the bill introduces a licensing regime, for example, for artisanal and small-scale mining operations, thereby enhancing economic growth. You're saying communities don't stand to benefit from the introduction of that regime.
Look, we've been engaged with government for the last 10 odd years around this question of artisanal mining, and we've told them that one cannot have, as this version amendments propose, is to have a system in which, you know, it's pie in the sky. It's a nice idea to say, yes, we're going to include artisanal and small-scale miners. But if you look at what is really happening in terms of the law, it's going to virtually be impossible for anybody that doesn't have extensive capital and extensive political connections to be able to access artisanal mining. And we're saying that quite the opposite needs to happen. Artisanal mining has become a vital source for people to obtain part of the economy, to participate in the economy, to have some income. And our state is making it much more difficult for them to get a part of that pie. You know, the state talks about business, we must make it easy for business. But what they mean is we're going to make it easy for corporations to take out the wealth and the profit of this country and ship it off abroad. Instead of saying we're going to use our mineral resources to empower everybody, to empower the working class, the people who are on the ground, the people who suffer the most, who bear the cost of mining. They're not doing that. So there is no pathway, no legitimate pathway that you are going to see communities being able to access it. This is a version of small-scale mining that the department has put together. And we've told them that that is not going to solve the problem. They are creating deeper and deeper divisions in society. Look at what the minister did. He called together on Friday all the people who benefit from the mining sector. That's the captains of industry, as he calls them, and organized labor. And they sat there and colluded, and they essentially spoke about how illegal mining is the problem.
Yeah.
But what they don't say is that they cannot keep the wealth for a few people. It has to be shared. That's the promise that our constitution makes. It says that the wealth will be shared in some sense, and our constitution is set up in a way that recognizes socioeconomic rights. And what Mr. Mantashe and the department and the Minerals Council are doing is they're closing off this sector to say, this is our sector. We are the ones who will benefit, and we will then hand over some crumbs to you as and when we feel it fit. And we've shown that even the crumbs, the Minerals Council and their members are stealing. Yeah. Up to 70% of the social and labor plans do not get to communities. Yeah. Communities are not sharing in this wealth. They are up to 70% unemployment in some communities that we work with. And that is not a recipe for growth. It is not a recipe for prosperity. It is not a recipe for social cohesion. Everything the government says they want to do. In fact, it seems like they are trying to deceive South Africa. They're trying to say, look at all these grand dialogues that we're having. So, don't worry about the fact that we are going to rob your rights here on the mining sector. We're going to take away your rights, but here we're going to say, let's come and talk and we have a nice conversation.
So the establishment of these committees, regional mining development and environmental committees, which I believe would be constituted of members of communities who are going to come and populate these committees. Are you saying that that particular development is not one that is significant structurally to bring addition to those issues that you're raising?
No, not at all. Not at all, Thabo. The thing is, and you saw it on Friday, the way that conference, that convening of the minister was done, it's basically by invitation. They don't want to hear what Macua has to say because we are telling them the truth. We are holding a mirror up to them and saying, look, you cannot go down this path because this won't work and this is how it should be done. So we're making clear proposals and they don't want to hear it. So in the same way, the way the legislation is shaped, it will be that the Department of Mineral Resources will be able to say, we choose you and we choose you, and you will now represent and speak for communities. But we've now understood that they don't want anybody who is not going to agree with them. So they're creating the psychopathic echo chamber in which everybody is going to agree with what the master says must happen. Now, that is not an oversight body. If you really want an oversight body, then that REMDEC must be expanded. It must include community representation, and it must go through a proper process of electing people onto those community positions. So, and there must be then a balance in terms of community voices and interest of others like corporate and other sectors that benefit out of mining who are on that committee. So there has to be a balance. And these amendments offer nothing of the sort. They're closing the sector. They're making it much more difficult for communities to participate. They're changing the definition of transformation. They're changing the definition of who's historically disadvantaged. They're changing the definition of who's interested and affected people. And they're closing it. They're trying to close it so that communities no longer have a say. And they're trying to whitewash this thing by saying, look at all the good things that we're doing. But if you take the time, as we have done, to unpack those amendments, you see that it's empty of any community value. It is completely focused on making business rich and for supporting the cronies that benefit of these operations, including Vala Mgodi, over 1-point-something billion rand spent to criminalize poor black people, but no kingpins arrested. Now, I wonder why. I wonder what Mr. Mkwananzi can say to us about the connections between politically connected elites and criminal syndicates and why Operation Vala Mgodi, after more than 1.5 billion rands spent, can only criminalize poor black people and not arrest the kingpins who need to be in jail.
So the amendments, so-called amendments that are aimed at strengthening the arm of the law in dealing with illegal activities, you are saying that they will only help to promote, I suppose, the operations of Vala Mgodi, of which you are not in support of.
So there's another area where you see this duplicitous, this diabolical approach of the department to the legislation. So they want to introduce policing, which is something that we are not opposed to in communities. They want to introduce policing, but the policing, if you read the way the law is set out, the policing will only be focused on communities. So if communities happen to want to mine in an area, the police is focused on them. Now, we've been asking for the longest time, let the police investigate corporate actors who are not delivering on social and labor plans and stealing the money from the poor, who are abusing environmental regulations, who are mining without permits from time to time. So we're saying, why not then strengthen the law to make sure that corporate illegal miners and those who are abusing communities can also be arrested, can also be charged? But no, the only thing this bill does is to focus on poor communities. So the whole setup of introducing policing in Section 90, I think it is to criminalize poor black people, to make it easier, to give them harsher sentences, and to try and deal with the question of poverty through criminalization. Now that's crazy. You cannot deal with poverty by criminalizing people who are hungry. There needs to be a different solution. And yet our government continues to just plow through because of the vested interest. You must remember, mining is massively profitable. Look at all of these people who've made millions of rands just of having a part of an ownership of a mine. I can mention a couple of ministers that come to mind, and mining is intensely profitable, and there are people who are benefiting, and it's in their interest to exclude communities and to have an easier path for politically connected and corporate elites to steal all of our wealth and to leave our people in poverty and misery. And that cannot be right.
Macua's Christopher Rutledge there. Much appreciated, and thank you for coming on this afternoon. That's Christopher Rutledge, Director of Macua Advise Office, on the bill introduced, or the draft bill at least introduced by Minister Gwede Mantashe. It's open now for public comments. It was introduced sometime in May.